Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Byte-Sized Tech Tour. I'm Johnny Grant, and today we're talking about kiosks. And to assist us with that, we've got the lovely Ian Chambers.
Morning, Johnny. How are you doing today? My name is Ian Chambers. I'm the CEO and founder of App4. We provide a white-labeled online ordering and kiosk service for hospitality.
Great stuff. And so today's discussion is around kiosk. So hopefully Ian will be able to give us some wonderful insight into that world. And I think it's really a really key time for it, actually. You know, as the industry moves to embrace omni-channel, the need and desire to increase revenue streams becomes more important than ever. Things like kiosk are becoming more and more of a key talking point alongside other channels like delivery and digital ordering. So yeah, really key time. So hopefully with some of the questions we'll have today, Ian can help us understand a little bit more. So first question, Ian, we've got is, what should operators think about when introducing a kiosk?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think with kiosks, sometimes operators or businesses can think that they don't apply to their business. I think traditionally people will see kiosks as a quick service only kind of application. Whereas really over the last sort of 12, 18 months, and certainly since the cost of labour and the accessibility to labour has sort of had a big effect on hospitality, more and more business types are starting to look at kiosks. So the first thing I would say is to look at how or if a kiosk can actually apply to your business principles. So for instance, we've got them in a traditional sit-in a cafe style or restaurant environment where they're being used to service customers that don't want to use the traditional scan, order and pay technology, don't want to go and stand in a queue at the till, but see the benefit of a large digital menu that shows them the imagery, that can spend time going through that menu. So assess whether or not it fits. It doesn't need to be you've got lots of queues and you're a takeaway only business. It can apply to traditional dine-in. Another application where we've looked at it recently is also for businesses that want to move the queues or certainly allow service to more customers at the same time. So for instance, in a carvery where they're putting kiosks in to serve 6, 7, 8 people at a time for table service using kiosks rather than them all standing in a queue for traditional carvery. So there's lots of different ways that kiosks can be used. It's not just for the the traditional takeaway and quick service businesses. So yeah, I think that's one of the things. The other thing is obviously labour. Whilst kiosks do obviously serve customers without humans, but you still potentially then need to either service a customer by taking food to the table, providing collection point areas, and it's whether or not you can actually fit that into your existing model. So if you're really tight on space, you still might have to sort of allocate some area that's then required for food collection or certainly put staff in place to then service the tables as well. So there are other factors that need to be considered when looking at kiosks.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? As with any digital ordering, actually, it's always about the infrastructure around it that makes it a success, isn't it? So I think that's a really important part of that.
I think even placement as well, Johnny, is a critical thing. Where you put that kiosk has a massive impact on its use. And they thought, we're going to put this by the front door because actually that's where all the kiosks are in other establishments, certainly in places like McDonald's and Burger King. Let's put them in the way they're disruptors because that's where they'll get used. But really in their environment, typically the customer will go to the table first before then going to the counter. So actually sticking the kiosk nearer where the tables are or further into the business actually is the right place to put the kiosk because that's where it'll be used rather than right, I've got to walk in, find my table and walk all the way back to the entrance where the kiosks are. So again, placement is something to consider as well.
Okay, so how does App4 then help with that?
Well, obviously, we provide a solution direct for the business. We take what our standard platform is and we tailor it to that business. So we build a branded solution. So we mix it to what your branding is, your colors, your fonts, your layout, even down to flow as well. So we can look at how that flow for the order gives. So if you've got loyalty, and do we need to build in the ability to scan QR codes or scan cards or use cards to identify individual members? Do you want to have a process where they can call for help? So there might be an alert screen that they can press and a member of staff can come over and help. We can then also look at building things like allergen filters and food group filters. So if you want to add in the ability for people to just filter down to vegan groups or vegetarian groups or those excluding dairy, we can build all that into it as well. And that all pulls through from the data that obviously is provided by Zonal and via the POS system. So it's a really sort of kind of straightforward, but really it's about that tailored process of what are your needs, what is actually the products that you're selling, and what's the menu, and then we make that fit within the kiosk. What we offer that's slightly different is that we can then manipulate the menu data and how we show that to the customer to make it the best environment for a kiosk. Sometimes, and I'm sure you're aware, Johnny, is that the data that comes out of a POS is POS centric. It's perfect for how a member of staff will use that POS, but that's not necessarily the perfect way for a customer to interact with it. So we've got that ability to manipulate how the menu is presented and make the journey the best as possible for the customer, whilst obviously keeping that on brand for the business as well.
So there's two things that resonate there for me. So it's that kind of extension of your core platform, isn't it? So actually, you know, from an operational and even a business reporting perspective, having that singular source of truth for your products and the sales of those products and the ordering journeys that go alongside them, as well as fitting into your existing service infrastructure, you know, ticket printers or kitchen screens or service screens, things like that. You know, that all needs to work. Infrastructure is important there, of course, but also importantly is that switch to digital only ordering. Exactly like you say, with not having a server present, is you lose some of that experience and actually, you know, helping the customer get to their final decision, you know, is a skill, is an art form. So bringing that to the digital world is also important.
I think the customer journey on placing that order is also, it's a personal thing that lots of businesses want to make that brand centric. The way we deal with the customers, the way we provide our service, the way that we complete an order, the way that we welcome our guests, all that can be built into the kiosk process to try and make it as friendly and as human a digital process can be, because there's a fear out there, certainly in some people, and that actually kiosks remove that. But it shouldn't do. It should actually enhance the ordering process, because there's lots of information that can be given and available to the customer that they wouldn't necessarily get from looking at a paper menu or from conversing with a server. So I think kiosks can be great and should be great, but it's about how that's delivered to the customer. And I think being all your data and having the single source of truth is brilliant, but sometimes you can't always have all the data you need. And I think that the ability for us to overlay on top of that to improve that experience is what kind of elevates the process a bit better.
So sticking with the customer or the guest side of the this journey, so what benefits will guests see?
Yeah, it's a good one, because sometimes people say, oh, the only benefit to the guest is it's quicker and easier and they don't have to queue. And the reality of it is that it is true. But I think there's also a lot more ability for the guest to experience more of the brand, to see more of what's available. So when people typically go to a kiosk, they actually spend more time ordering on a kiosk than they would at a counter, because they don't feel as rushed. They don't have to be people stood waiting behind them, and also they don't have to go at the speed of the server. They can go at their own speed. There's also the ability to take on board much more information. So not only can you look at pictures, you can read descriptions. Like I said, you can filter data down to the products you like. Upselling obviously is a critical thing. We know within traditional online ordering, upselling is huge, and you can increase basket size. The same applies to kiosks. But from a customer's point of view, it gives them access to see other suggestions and other items they might not have thought about or seen before. So obviously there's a benefit to them there. I think the other thing is that it makes it a nice mix between the scanning a QR code with your phone and going to the counter to place an order. Yes, you are not doing that side of it. You don't need to get your phone out and do it, but it does give you the speed element of it, because once you've got used to it, and certainly I know I'm like, is when I go into a place like McDonald's or Burger King to go and place an order, I pretty much know what I want. I can go to a kiosk and I can order it in 20 or 30 seconds, and I've paid for it and walk away. Whereas if I had to go and queue at a counter, I can still place it in 20 or 30 seconds, but I'm saving myself that 4 or 5 minutes of actually queuing and waiting and going through that process. I think also the benefit for the customer as well is consistency as well, because actually all of their choices, their options, everything they're putting on that order is clearly defined, and it's quite rigid, but it's clearly defined on purpose. So there should be no mistakes. Whereas at the end of the day, we know that humans are humans, and there is that element of mistakes that can still happen. So I think there's lots of benefits for the customer to use kiosks. It's not just about the speed and the time saving for the business. It's actually a benefit that overlays for the customer as well.
When we talk about omni-channel too, I think it's important that I think you give guests options where they're due, because not all guests every guest is equal. It's some guests will prefer a kind of a human-led interaction. I always tell my mother is obsessed with going to a human being at a till point and placing her order, and it is not the person to download an app or go to a kiosk. Unless it's essential. So I think that kind of omni-channel world is important, but then also the consistency, like you say. If I'm a guest and I know what I want, then I know I want to get it whatever channel I use that's right for me at the time. So actually that consistency is important and gives a validation to the kiosk journey too. Because actually that you can get the same experience there that you can, or even a better experience in a kiosk because of the wonderful things we can do to enhance that, like you just said. Ian, thank you very much. Much appreciated for your time today. Been really insightful, great conversation, and until next time, thanks very much.
Cheers, Johnny.